The most likely thing that would happen in this sort of training will be given in high schools or higher grades in middle schools, mainly because they get the concept about what they will study in the higher grades after learning lots of subjects in the past in primary and secondary education. However, the exclusive part in our world that is that we will make other programs like consulting and career related lessons in schools that help them get a visualization of what they're like in the future. That was such characterization we move on to that. Oftentimes, students have no visions about what they will do in the future. Parents force them to study rather than leading them to think about their actual careers, especially low-income families. They often have no ideas about their past, which makes the future very volatile, and students often don't know what they should focus on their own. With that being settled, let me move on to our first argument, which is about better preparations. So why are students feeling lost? It's because all they have done in their lives were mostly cram education that covers all the subjects. They feel some sort of pressure to choose their but they feel that this studying should be the basics, and their parents and teachers will feel the same way too. So this leads to students mechanically studying when they actually are skilled in only certain parts of academical studies or even art or sports. What kind of help can preparations of employment can give them? Firstly, there will be more teachers that care about the students' careers. Most likely, there will be more checks and balances for the students, such as consulting programs in schools or exams or even career-related lessons from a young age. The main impact here is that students feel secured about their future. And even if they choose their path comparatively later, they still would have time to prepare until the actual preparation starts, so they will feel very stable mentally. Secondly, there will be earlier preparations for the students, such as choosing their subjects and academical programs based on the concepts that they have chosen as their jobs. For example, if a kid is preparing to become a diplomat, they will have to expand their abilities on English or other languages and probably social studies. This all will happen in our world. However, in their world, this has to be done exclusively earlier for them unless they're excessively skilled, which is not the main delta of this debate, as well as students that are found out to be good at all sorts of education. In their world, if they're focusing on the exact same amount for every subject, or even more for science and math, which moms find trendy, then even if they found skills in other things, it's very hard and strict to succeed in that process because they have not thought about that for a long time. However, what makes this exclusive on our side is that because we allow them to think of what they're good at from the start, this enables them for better preparation, which eventually leads to better college admissions and employments in the future. So, our second argument is about how we help the vulnerable low-income students. I think the most important thing for both students and parents is to secure a good future, because that is why current society pressures kids to study hard, learn hard, and go to a good university. But the most vulnerable people here are not the ones who went to a special science high school or an international school that actually prepares them for a good university. But it is the people who just went to normal school, learned a bunch of spread out information, and do not know what they're going to do next. There are comparatively less teachers, less high quality lessons than special schools. These skills feels neglected and do not know what major they even want to have. Therefore, the government providing specialized education is much more helpful for those who decide early that are going to a vocational school or get into a job early. Then secondly, why does our side exclusively help the students? Even when schools are for broader mindset, this is only the case for students who have basic amounts of resources in the first place. The vulnerable stakeholders has no capacity to receive this. But on our side, the school actually provides a clear roadmap for them to get hired into something with their life. This is important because even if we conceive the true meaning of school as is for a broader mindset, for the vulnerable people who do not care about this, they care about food on the table. In this situation, the government is not justified to force academic skills when this has no real impact on them and they will fail anyway. For these reasons, I'm so proud to propose. Thank you.
Imagine this, Judge. You are a university student who chose a major for art, so you're expected to be an artist. However, these days, the technology is totally unpredictable. Will AI replace your job as an artist in a flash? If you've only studied for art, how do you expect to get other jobs? There will be a huge number of people there's a huge number of people facing this problem, which causes unemployment and instability. So the only way to solve this is to stand for opposition. Now, today in my speech, I will tell you with solid reasoning on why education should not prioritize preparing students for employment over general education. In this debate, if opposition proves the effects of preparing students for employment, that it outweighs the positive effects. And if we prove the positive the positive the positive aspects of general education, opposition wins this debate. Opposition here is trying to defend the status quo, which is that most students attend general education. Why is this so much better? Because general education covers a whole spectrum of different fields, both keeping what jobs students will have like flexible and raising the possibility of them being employed. Our side isn't teaching useless stuff. We're making sure that students will be able to find a job that they like, not limited to what they just learned for a specific subject. Now, I would like to address side proposition's point. They said that students like preparing students for employment is causes like their stability mentally and prepares better preparations and help the minority. However, I don't see why is that true. Firstly, to their point of they'll be stable mentally. Well, our side is more like helps them be more stable mentally, because if you only learned one major, you will be stressed. You can only find one job, and that you can only find a job in that major. So you don't have any other solutions if you face if you're rejected by what you applied for. And for them, their point of better preparations, well, our side ensures that their side is too much more risky, and our side ensures that people will eventually be so much more likely to get a good job. And they say that it helps minority. However, minority, if they prepare for a specific employment, because minorities are more likely to be discriminated. If they just apply for a job and they are rejected because of discrimination, then they won't not have another choice. However, our side ensures that they get a chance to have a good job. Now, moving on to my argument on why general rejected. On why general education offers students a broader and more flexible choice in their job possibilities. As I mentioned in my opening line, AI is developing rapidly, and who knows what it'll replace in just 4 years, which is usually the length it takes to finish preparation for employment. This will result in many students being rejected in the jobs they applied for. And what will happen after that? So if the students prepared for a specific like major of employment, then students can only apply for jobs in that field. They will have no other choices. However, if they if they learned about like general education, then they will be much more flexible. If they get rejected, they can apply for jobs in so many more fields. So this will be much better in the long run. In addition, even if in the best case there's no AI taking so many jobs, the probability of students unable to take the job they studied for is huge. This happens because, firstly, there will be too many people competing in one single field, so not everyone is guaranteed a stable job. So because of all the reasons, please stand with opposition. Thank you, and it's protected.
Judge, do you think all the parents sending their kids to art school are idiots? Of course they don't. Their parents don't expect that the students will become really famous artists. Of course not, but at least there are many jobs inside the art field too. So proud to propose. So first of all, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our extension about parents' incentive. So here, so I like to clarify something before going to any of my extension or rebuttals. In this side of this debate, elite students aren't the delta of this debate. Like students who will not have any thoughts, who will go to be like doctors or lawyers, aren't any delta of this debate, because in under both worlds they'll work really really hard to get a good score on all fields. So therefore, general education, whatever education, they'll really work hard in all fields. So but however, for this, so the delta inside this debate are normal students, right? So but these kind of normal students' parents don't have much incentive to know a lot about their their kids' future career, right? They don't have incentive to know deeply about what their kids want to do. So because the school and the government merely says that like, hey, your kid needs to get an A+ in all of the subjects like math, English, everything. But in our world, parents actually have an active incentive to care about their future's career, care about like what my kid is supposed to study if they want to get like this kind of job, and B, they also have an incentive to know what my kid likes and what my kid wants to do, because now this the government, school, society is now pressuring these kind of parents to actually find out what their kid wants to do later inside life, and what this kid has like passion inside, right? And also, even their side keep talking, oh, what about this AI replaces everything? But however, AI taking away the jobs cannot be solved in their side also. How can learning a broader spectrum of subject get and win AI, right? AI, of course, knows math and English or whatever, all of this better than us, right? However, in our role, we enable students to become expert at one sector that has more probabilities to win AI. And also, even if like AI like somehow like takes over the job of an artist, even if you keep studying art, that the artist is not what just one job you can artist is not one job you can choose. Like for example, you can be an artist or stuff like that. And also if you like study like the medical field, then you can be you can also be a doctor, but you can also be things like nurses, right? And they also, first of all, some quick rebuttals for the LO. They first talked about our size rebuttal, that mental stability for students is better on their side because these kind of students are nervous. Like what if this like whole job just collapses? I think that these kind of students are still kind of immature. They mostly just care about their happiness, like trying happiness, doing their own passion and what they like in life. And also the school will probably like for example like a teachers will keep reassuring them, hey, even if you fail at this job, if you study this kind of sector, then you can have like other jobs like this. And also they also talked about, even if AI doesn't replace these kind of jobs, there'll be too much competition in one spectrum. But however, I think this is so symmetrical, because like even in the status quo, a lot of students go to like art school and a lot of students want to be doctors. There's still going to be competition in one area, right? But however, at least in our side, the school actually funds these kind of students to actually study more in the second sector. And also, I think that the government will, even if this student somehow fails at this like whole art spectrum at all, if they actually fail at everything, I think that then the government will have a lot of mechanisms in the status in our world, where like maybe if this student does not get hired, then maybe the government will help them will actually make some kind of companies hire them, or maybe they'll actually make this kind of student more funding this kind of student to have more artworks. And I think this is exclusive on our side, because this now the government and the school is actively forcing that this kind of students to know what they want to do in life. So of course they need to take responsibility for it. There will be a massive amount of criticism if they do not. So therefore, I'm so proud to propose.
In such a fast-changing world, side proposition is proposing the belief that education should prioritize preparing students for employment instead of general education. This is when a bunch of what ifs come in. What if students are not flexible enough to adapt to future new jobs? What if they only have the skills in one job? What if they lose critical skills for future life? As opposition second speaker, we oppose the topic that this House believes that education should prioritize preparing students for employment over general education. So firstly, our side's first speaker said that general education can make students more flexible with a wide range of job opportunities. Proposition is saying that they're analyzing parents' incentives, that parents actually get a chance to care about children's career, and that AI cannot be solved in our world as well. However, they're ignoring the definition of what preparing children for employment means. According to the information slide, preparation for employment includes training students for more practical vocations, but also sometimes redirecting them to fields that are more in demand. The government decides whether they are redirecting children to other more jobs, good or not. This is not what the parents decide. And this connects to the PM's point on helping poor children. That's where they make a fatal mistake. Let me finish this first. Their job-focused prioritization traps poor students into a narrow, low-mobility labor tracks. Wealthier families already have outside resources like private tutoring or career mentorship. So the government, of course, would allocate poorer jobs for the poor students, which would mean long-term inequality. Yes, what's your PLI?
Practical skill on our side, practical skill will teach the compound interest of students. Why does your system's failure to do that help the kids actually prepare for the real world?
Actually, on our side, we have general education, and also your side said things about the preparing children for employment starts at high school. And you say that in primary school and middle school, they prepare children for skills. However, high school is just as important as developing skills as primary and middle school. This is where children solidify their foundation of understanding, creative thinking, and ethical skills. Now, moving on to my claim. My claim is that prioritizing employment takes away individual autonomy and critical skills for children's development. Firstly, priority changes the purpose of learning from I as a student need to improve and show growth to I'm going to be an employee and I'm going to be practical on what I focus on. Proposition's model establishes employment as the primary goal of school. Even if general subjects remain, every part of student education will be restructured around market usefulness. Secondly, employment prioritizing suppresses critical, creative, and reflecting skills for children and students. General education's unique purpose is building developmental skills for moral growth, such as questioning, reasoning, creative thinking, and analyzing ethically. These are life skills, not just job skills. Proposition may argue that prioritizing employment doesn't mean they are ignoring general studies. However, prioritizes that definition is to mainly focus on a subject. This means resources, time, and effort would be mainly allocated to this subject, leaving fewer resources for other studies. People cannot focus on both at once. So on our side, we have long-term impacts, individual lifelong benefits, autonomy and critical thinking, which are included in daily life and outweigh work by both significance and long-term impact. And finally, we provide sustainable economic benefits. Adaptable workers, we benefit long-term labor force. So in such a fast-changing world, we cannot make sure which jobs might disappear or appear in the future. The best we can do is get ready for it. Thank you.
First, I'd like to do some rebuttals before moving on to the clashes I made. So they talk about how there's going to be moral growth of these people, but how do vulnerable students actually use this in life? What they are actually worried about is probably going to be money, the food that they get on their table, not this moral growth that the opposition really likes to say. B, even if you do prioritize this, you can still learn by interacting with friends, like people and with people like friends and teachers in your school. Just because we are prioritizing, focusing on your job doesn't mean that you suddenly don't have a social life. So moving on to our class. So the first class is about what are schools actually for. So we think that the school's meaning, we agree that it is to make students think for themselves, to actually get a mind, and get a basic study. But the importance is high school. But at the stage of high school, we think that learning your future is more important than just basic studies. So why? First, they talk about how you can't learn life skills in our what. However, we think that you all have already probably learned all of this in the middle and elementary school, which is where you actually learn about these basic stuff. But during this stage in high school, we think it's more likely for you to actually have to focus on your studies. The second, it's about how actually, but by this time, we think you actually know your score, whether you have an A or a B or a C, and what job actually suits your kind of score. So we think it's just a waste of time if you have to learn math, if you're going to have to do another job in the future. Third, we think that vulnerable people are likely to fail in their studies anyways in their world because they're so busy with taking money, and they think it's not worth it having to learn these basic studies that they won't use in their future. So not only is this more important, it's also much more efficient in allocating children to their future jobs, because the government is likely to also give special programs or lessons that determine which job the students want to do. So even if the opposite says that basic lessons help students think, but because of the urgency of the students finding a supportable future, we think that this is much bigger than the basic lesson that they prioritize. Therefore, we win this clash. So which side actually helps the vulnerable students prepare more? So the opposite says you will lose your job later on. Therefore, students will fail. We think this is not true because first, when the teacher consults students, it's most likely that the teacher will choose non-replaceable jobs to offer to these students. Second, when students fail, students will always fail on their side because they think that learning this kind of basic thing is pointless to their future. Third, even if in our worst case and the students do fail, we think there's a lot of different fields to choose from. So the long-term stability is much bigger on our side. So fourth, a lot of people switch anyways in universities nowadays. So why is it so different on our side? So the second class we want to talk about is who gives actual guaranteed benefits. So the opposition says AI will replace your job. A, we already told you this is symmetric because on their side AI exists as well. So why is it actually exclusive in our side that AI will take over the jobs? B, we think this is actually worse on their side because students can't predict which job will actually get replaced without
a teacher actually helping them and consulting them about their future. See, teaching one side in our world probably increases the probability of someone winning AI later in their job. So actually, we help them win AI later on. The problem with opposition is that they don't give a guaranteed benefit, because at least in our side, produces a job at the end, tells students where to go. The opposition tells them you should learn math, you should learn Korean, but you're probably not going to use this anyways. But even if you do, we're not giving you a job. They don't actually give any guaranteed job for the vulnerable people. So comparing what these vulnerable people actually need in the end, we solve the problem. The problem is the status quo is that these poor kids often don't go to vocational schools because they don't know how to go. They don't have help from teachers, and no one in the opposition helps. Our side at least offers a solution. So the opposition says that the government will force people to take bad jobs. However, we think this is not true, because we think that oftentimes vocational schools offer better education than what you get in a normal school, and this is not always that bad. And second, we think this is symmetric because on their side, too, vocational schools exist, but they're mostly silent. They're non-existent, and people often don't care about them. But because this is worse, because there's no actual help from the government, who doesn't know these kind of vocational schools are going through a hard time. We can flip this by saying that in our world, if the government are giving bad jobs to these people, since there's so many kids are going in the end, the society and the parents will demand change. The media attention will make the infrastructure and the quality of these kind of vocational schools better. So even if it's a bad job, we think that the government actually has the capacity to change it in our world.
Imagine being a student. You want to learn art. That's great, amazing, cool, yay. Sure, you'll probably succeed, maybe. But though that doesn't mean you should just focus on art and a few scattered bits of and pieces of others. Sure, you learn math and science in elementary and middle school, but high school is really what prepares you for it. Well, great. But then suddenly you decide, like, scrap that. I don't want to be an artist. Well, great. You barely know any complicated math. Your essay writing's trash, and you can't get at any college except for art school, or any job except for art, which you don't want anymore. That'd be bad, real bad. Hello, Judge. I'm the whip speaker for opposition. I strongly oppose the motion. This House believes education should prioritize preparing students for employment over general education. So let's split this debate into two clashes: employment via its broad range and knowledge in its use in the future. Now, for the first clash, the other team stated that the people who need this the most are people who are mediocre schools and don't know what they want. But that's the status quo. Think about it. People are trained for multiple things: math, science, language arts. So when they need a new plan, they know what to do. In their world, people can do art, assuming you choose arts, and they can't do anything else, not enough to get a good job. This is said that kids are immature and they only want to play and they don't know what they want, but that's an assertion, and not all kids are naive and childish. They know their futures. For example, most of the kids our age are trying hard. Some of us don't need our parents to remind us to write homework. Some of us are independent. There's no proof that kids are totally immature. However, we said rejected. However, we said this that broader knowledge acts as like a backup, and it's highly unlikely that they will stay employed and keep on doing their job their entire life. And only focusing on employment training can cause, again, unemployment. And we win this clash because we ensure that kids get their futures ready. You can't learn just barely any math and English and life skills because you focus mainly on art in high school and expect to carry your entire life with the job you chose. We prepare kids for the most common scenario instead of the minority that they will carry on forever with their dream job like Prop says. So now for the second clash, they said the other team stated that it's in high school, so they know what they're going to do. They're mature enough, they know their future plans, etc. But sure, your career is decades. There's no guarantee that you won't get fired or quit. Maybe your job is too hard for you and decide to quit. Or maybe you were caught slacking off because you were tired and you got fired. Then you don't have the broader knowledge to do anything else, and that would be really bad. They also said that employment training helps with college and to secure a better future. But if the kids have a advanced, broader knowledge and out-of-school advanced career training, isn't that better instead of just career training? They also stated that this helps parents know what their kids wants to study and what their kids like. But in fact, in the status quo, the other team claims that they must learn their career learning out of school. So the parents definitely know. You're not gonna like get a class by yourself and not tell your parents to disappear for like 2 hours every single day. Our side not only has a broader and more accepted.
We're not saying that parents don't care about students' classwork. Parents really have them status and actually know what your kid likes and what your kid wants to do in the future.
Well, first of all, if you're going to get classes, again, I understand that you're saying that parents do not care about their classes, but they're bound to know about what their kids want. They have communication, and they're not gonna be totally oblivious to what their kids like. The status quo still supports communication. So carrying on, our side not only has a broader and more advanced education as well as their career, but their side has the same amount of skills for their career and worse general knowledge. They also said that AI is also on their side, and we're treating it like ours is the only one with it. But we have broad and career learning. They only have career. It's more likely that their side's AI will be the most impactful. So we said the broader spectrum can use for backups if they change their mind, if they get unemployed, etc. And our side is much riskier. So we win this clash because our side clearly uses knowledge to one gets from school to our advantage. We make sure that the right education students can thrive in society no matter if they change their jobs, etc. Our worst case is that they need more education, but at least they can do complicated math while writing good essays and do decent art. But their side, for the sake of this argument, they can do somewhat mediocre math, they extremely dislike and are trash at writing essays, and all they can do is art. How can they survive? Of course, some people can do art for their entire lives, but that's a minority and highly unlikely. We need to prepare kids for what is most likely to happen. That A, they won't get fired, B, won't change their mind, C, will somehow stay whatever they want to be for the rest of their life and get enough money to thrive. Our side gives broader knowledge and out-of-school advanced career training instead of Prop's vague general knowledge and advanced career training. So in conclusion, we have proven to you that education prioritizes students for employment and over general education. It could bring a wider range of knowledge that can help kids in case their plan doesn't work out. Thank you, and please support opposition.
As a reply speaker for opposition, I will bring you the important and core ideas of each side and reveal why opposition has won this debate. Firstly, we bring you two important arguments in our speeches. We say that, firstly, prioritizing employment takes away individual autonomy and critical skills for development. Well, this is important because students get much stronger to face a broad range of careers. In addition, we also say that general education offers students a broader and more flexible choice in job opportunities. Many people are unemployed, and people focus if people only focus on one field, then it is likely that they get rejected in applications. If they attend preparation for employment, then they will not have they have only a limited scopes of job they can apply to, so they cannot change what they want to be. So this is so much more riskier. Now, on the other hand, proposition limits their ideas to the point that it's best because they have better preparation, students are stable more mentally, and it helps minority. Firstly, this is not important, and it does not reach their goal because firstly, they say that it helps minority. However, it's much more riskier for minority, so it does not help minority. There might be discrimination in job applicants, so it's more likely for minorities to be rejected in job applications. If they're rejected, how will they be able to find a new job if they only focus on one field? And also, they say that it's better for preparation. Well, that might be true. However, even if it's better for preparations, even if students will be an expert at that field, but what is the use of them being an expert, knowing a lot about one field, if they are not likely to get a job in that field? So in conclusion, we believe that our side wins this debate because of all our solid and good reasoning.
Judge, a school that you can't get hired has failed at its... Well, wait. I'm so sorry. I'll start again. On 3, 2, 1. Judge, a school that can't get you hired has failed at its most basic promise. We believe that what makes a school is that they lead students to improve as wonderful grown-ups. They help young kids find what they feel genuine happiness at. They enable students that never felt hope in their poor states to get up and prepare. This is what the schools in our side does. Today's debate comes down to two main issues. Firstly, is students secure their futures, or are they really able to succeed? Judge, it doesn't matter if you cannot live a proper money-earning life when you can get broader information. We that we make students grow into a secured future. They can actually succeed by preparing for a long time. The only response coming from OP was, oh, but you can fail when you focus on art. From the start, we have told you that there will be checks and balances that lead them to adequate routes, even when they failed the initial path. A total benefit to students, and OP couldn't rebut us. Secondly, how will vulnerable stakeholders get impacted? Let me pull up a direct claim from opposition. Oh, students will gain knowledge in broader spectrum. Our team kept on saying that this is not the solution for these kind of vulnerable students. We give them actual solvency. We provide lots of paths that they can choose with a stable mind. No rushing, no feeling lost, and no delay. Actual solution for them to find something they love and actual employment to earn money for their desperate families. Opposition never engaged to this point. They never care about the vulnerable stakeholders, the poor kids that are on the ground and are in desperate for help. This debate at its core is for the students, of the students, and by the government side. The team that gives direct help for the students. The judicious judge, we clearly took this debate for our substandard, dense mechanization, and direct logic that OP couldn't beat at all. We care about absolutely all of the stakeholders, and we try to give the most possible and positive effect that can give them. Do you want a world where every child can do what they genuinely want? Please vote for proposition. Thank you.